Welcome back, my spooky viewers, to a place where fear takes root and nightmares blossom. Tonight we unravel 3 chilling tales that will leave you questioning the very foundations of reality. The suburbs will never seem the same. Picture this, a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind where kids play hopscotch and neighbors gather for barbecues. It seems impossible that anything sinister could penetrate this idyllic facade. But for one family, the American dream was about to morph into a waking nightmare. The Jones family, new to the neighborhood, started noticing a strange presence in their backyard after sunset. A flicker of movement in the periphery, a shape that seemed to dissolve whenever they turned their heads directly towards it. At first they dismissed it as an overactive imagination, but the sightings persisted, growing bolder, more defined. The shadows seemed to be growing larger, more confident. Their backyard, once a refuge for their children's laughter, was transformed into a breeding ground for paranoia. One particularly unsettling evening, as Mr. Jones was grilling hamburgers, he caught a glimpse of the shadow lurking near the swing set. It was taller now, resembling a towering humanoid figure, its edges blurred and indistinct. The laughter of his children died in his throat, replaced by a primal fear that sent chills down his spine. He called out, his voice a nervous tremor in the twilight, but the figure remained motionless. As darkness deepened, so did the family's unease. The shadow began appearing closer to the house, its presence felt through the cold spots that materialized in its wake. Sleep, once a sanctuary, became an ordeal. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside their windows sent their hearts racing. Then came the night it crossed the threshold. The family huddled together in the living room, a fragile sense of unity against the encroaching darkness. A storm raged outside, the wind howling like a banshee, mirroring the terror that clawed at their insides. Suddenly the lights flickered, plunging them into an oppressive blackness. A collective gasp escaped their lips, the sound swallowed by the storm's fury. Then it happened. A scratching sound like claws on wood emanated from the back door. Mr. Jones, his face pale and etched with fear, slowly crept towards the door, a baseball bat trembling in his grip. The scratching reached a fever pitch, and then with a deafening crash, the door burst open, revealing nothing. At the end of a sleepy, tree-lined street in the heart of suburbia stood a house cloaked in whispers. It was a grand old Victorian, its paint peeling like scabs, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the world. This was 112 Maple Street, a place the locals avoided, a place where whispers turned into chilling tales whispered around campfires. It was known as the haunted house on Maple Street, and for good reason. Legend had it that the house was once home to a wealthy widow, Eleanor Blackwood, who met an untimely and gruesome end within its walls. Some whispered of a jealous lover, others of a family curse. Whatever the truth, her tormented spirit was said to linger within the home, unable to find peace. One sweltering summer night, a group of friends, fueled by youthful bravado and cheap beer, decided to see if the legends were true. There was Jake, the skeptic, Emily, the adventurous one, Ben, the quiet observer, and Chloe, the sensitive one. The air grew heavy as they stepped onto the overgrown lawn, the scent of decay clinging to the night. As they approached the front porch, the floorboards groaned under their combined weight, as if warning them to turn back. Ignoring the prickling unease that settled upon them, they pushed open the creaking front door and stepped inside. The interior was shrouded in an oppressive darkness, the air thick with dust and the weight of forgotten memories. Cobwebs clung to every surface like macabre decorations. The faint scent of decaying flowers hung in the air, a ghostly perfume that spoke of bygone days. As their eyes adjusted to the gloom, they began to make out the remnants of a once grand, life-tattered velvet curtains, a dusty grand piano, a portrait of a stern-faced woman with haunted eyes that seemed to follow their every move. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. Chloe, her eyes wide with terror, pointed a trembling finger towards the top of the grand staircase. There, bathed in a sliver of moonlight, stood a translucent figure in a white gown. Its face was obscured by shadow, but they could feel its sorrowful gaze fixed upon them. Panic seized the group. They stumbled back, their fear palpable in the hushed whispers and hurried breaths. Jake, his skepticism shaken to the core, tripped over a loose floorboard and fell to the ground with a thud. As he lay there, his heart pounding against his ribs, he noticed something peculiar. The scent of decaying flowers was stronger now, almost overpowering. Chapter 3. The Disappearing Neighbor. In the seemingly peaceful suburban enclave of Willow Creek Lane, where gossip traveled faster than the delivery trucks, a chilling mystery began to unfold. It centered around Mrs. Eleanor Wright, a retiree known for her prize-winning rose bushes and her disconcerting habit of talking to herself. One crisp autumn morning, Mrs. Wright vanished. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist, leaving behind a void in the neighborhood's rhythm and an unsettling absence in the perfectly manicured flower beds. The police were called, their investigation thorough yet fruitless. Neighbors offered conflicting accounts. Some swore they'd seen her just days ago, tending her beloved roses. Others insisted she'd been acting strangely, whispering to unseen companions in the days leading up to her disappearance. Weeks morphed into months, and the mystery of Mrs. Wright's vanishing act deepened. The house stood vacant, a silent sentinel at the end of the cul-de-sac, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the world. Then, a young couple, oblivious to the whispers and rumors that swirled around the property, moved into the house on Willow Creek Lane. The Harpers, eager to create a life together in their new home, dismissed the tales as nothing more than overactive imaginations fueled by suburban boredom. They soon discovered, however, that some mysteries refused to remain buried. At first, it was just a feeling, a subtle shift in the atmosphere within the house. A lingering chill that clung to certain rooms, a faint floral scent that seemed to permeate the air, even though there were no flowers to be found. Then came the sounds, the soft murmur of voices late at night, the distinct impression of footsteps creaking on the wooden floorboards, though they were alone in the house. One particularly unnerving evening, as Sarah Harper was preparing dinner, she heard her name whispered soft and breathy, as if from the very walls themselves. She spun around, her heart pounding against her ribs, but the kitchen was empty. The unsettling occurrences escalated, weaving their way into the fabric of their lives. Objects moved inexplicably, lights flickered, and the faint scent of roses grew stronger, clinging to their clothes, their hair, a constant reminder that they were not alone. One night, driven by a mixture of curiosity and mounting dread, Mark Harper decided to investigate the attic. He'd noticed that the attic door, always slightly ajar, seemed to resist his attempts to close it fully. Armed with a flashlight and a growing sense of foreboding, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air in the attic was heavy, thick with dust and the weight of forgotten years. Cobwebs hung from every rafter, and the only light came from the beam of his flashlight, cutting through the oppressive darkness. As his eyes adjusted, he began to make out the shapes of discarded furniture, old trunks and boxes stacked precariously against the far wall. And then he saw it. A small wooden jewelry box tucked away in the corner as if hidden from view. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings on its surface. As he lifted the lid, a musty scent wafted up, mingled with the unmistakable fragrance of roses. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single white rose, its petals tinged with an unnatural shade of black. As Mark stared at the rose, a cold shiver ran down his spine. He recognized the rose from the missing persons flyer of Mrs. Wright. It was her favorite kind. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest, and saw nothing. But he could feel it, a presence in the room, watching him, cold and unseen. So, there you have it, another descent into the darkest corners of our world. The suburbs, once symbols of safety and normalcy, revealed as breeding grounds for fear, for the unexplained. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales. Until next time, stay safe and stay scared.